On today's episode, we do a marathon on cringe takes for the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict, including how supporting Rittenhouse is akin to supporting murderers and white supremacists, why getting hit in the head with a skateboard shouldn't make you feel threatened, and we take a look at an accidentally based leftist who believes in self-defense, as long as it is against the right wing. This is Cringe Posts. Hey friends, welcome to the Cringe Post podcast. This is where we take on those online takes that you see and you're like, oh, there's something funny about this, or this kind of rubs me the wrong way, but I don't quite know how to address it. We kind of pull all those posts together each week and we assemble them and show, hey, this is why they don't make much sense. So I'm Britt, like I said earlier, and I'm here with my co-host Donnie. Donnie, anything you want to say before we get rolling?
This is going to be a good one, and I'm really excited for it. There's one focused topic, but so many aspects to it that we just had to break down so many cringe takes. I'm just really excited. It's going to be a good one.
Same. So before, for those of you who have been living under a rock, we're going to be going over many social media takes on the Kyle Rittenhouse trial and verdict that just recently occurred. If you are not online, you probably haven't heard about this. We'll kind of do an overview. But if you have been online, I'm sure most of these you have seen at some point. Before we get started, though, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe our show. We've been seeing a really nice increase of listeners, and no doubt in part to you guys sharing and maybe heard about us on the Tom Woods Show or whatever. It really helps us out, and help us spread the message of anti-cringe to your friends and family. Before we do any other cringes, and I guess our first act of anti-cringe is to address our past cringes. And today we're going to be taking a look at Donald Kimball. Sometimes we've got political cringes. Sometimes we've got, interpersonal cringes. Today is more of an interpersonal one for Donald. And in October 3rd of 2009, he posts, Donald Kimball likes thinking and thinks it is the most effective way to plan ahead, as it is one of the only ways to do so.
This is the subreddit I'm 14 and this is deep. It's so bad.
I'll have to get on that one. I haven't seen it yet.
I think technically I'm 15 in this, so it's actually not that far off, right? But yeah. I mean, I'm 14 and this is deep. It's just full of these stupid, banal posts that I'm like, whoa, this is profound. It's so not so stupid. I just. When we go back and look through our old posts to find cringe, like there's a lot of dumb things on there, but there are a few that I feel like, even if they're not political in nature, which there are plenty of bad political takes, if you've listened to our previous episodes, you will know. But I like ones like these in particular because it betrays a way of thinking almost, even if, it's not saying like what you're thinking in the political world. Like, this is the kind of guy, these are the kinds of insights that I had. And so then when you hear me say something like, oh yeah, of course I'm supporting Rick Santorum, you're like, okay, I understand. The guy who's like, thinking's the only way is an effective way to plan ahead. He likes thinking. It's the only way to do that, to plan ahead. Like, what kind of a stupid comment is that? Let alone sharing it with the world online.
It reminds me of those when we first dropped this in right before we started. It reminded me of those nature walk videos, and where the guy sees the aspen and he's like, "This is an aspen tree," and you can tell it's an aspen because of the way it is. And it's like, oh, like the only way to plan is to think. Ooh.
I'm the modern. I think, therefore I am. I really am a pioneer of philosophy here. I plan ahead, and therefore I like thinking because it's one of the only ways to do that. But yeah,
you like planning ahead.
I didn't plan ahead. I didn't think too much on this one, so I don't have too many plans for this. But I just thought it was funny to laugh at.
It's a good one. All right, moving on to our Kyle Rittenhouse takes. So for those in the audience, so Rittenhouse was this kid in 2020, and he went to Kenosha, Wisconsin during the BLM riots, where billions of dollars were literally lit on fire by protesters. And he came there specifically to protect a used car business. This used car business had some dumpsters that were lit on fire and pushed into them, and people were attacking them. They're actually owned by people of color, which was kind of interesting. So this group of business, they asked Kyle, as well as a few of his friends and other people in the community, to come down and help protect their businesses. Kyle went. He had an AR-15 that he legally owned. did not cross state lines with the AR-15. And he basically protected the businesses. He had a fire extinguisher. He was cleaning off graffiti. There are multiple times where people, assaulted him with pepper spray or, yelled insults at him, and he didn't retaliate. And basically what happened that night is later in the night, and probably in the early morning, one of these guys named Joseph Rosenbaum had seen Kyle running around and planned an ambush for him. And so they kind of planned an ambush. Kyle came running by to go protect this business that they were lighting a dumpster on fire and trying to push the debris into. And Joseph Rosenbaum basically rushed at Kyle, said, "I'm going to kill you." And he said some other things that I can't say on this family-friendly podcast. Someone fired a shot into the air. Joseph Rosenbaum got his hand on Kyle's AR-15. And once he did that, Kyle decided to fire because he decided, well, I'm probably in danger now. Someone is probably shooting at me and someone's trying to grab my gun and has their hands on it. Kyle killed Joseph Rosenbaum. And then knowing that, the crowd around him was going to get a little bit rowdy and potentially hurt him, and they were yelling things like, "Hey, we're going to shoot you in the head," he decided to run. And then the now infamous video of him running towards the police line happened shortly after that, and he had a bunch of folks chasing after him as he was trying to get to the police. One of them hit him in the head with a skateboard twice. The second time he was on the ground, and so he shot that guy because obviously he was going in for the killing blow. And then another guy tried to pull out a Glock and shoot him in the head, and Kyle shot him in the arm, and then he made it to safety. What's crazy about this, right, is this is all on video. You can see all of this on video. It's probably the clearest picture of self-defense you could ever have in terms of trying to take it to jury. And people made this a big deal, and the jury deliberated for, I think it was 3 days, 24 hours total, to get to a verdict. And thankfully, they declared Rittenhouse innocent. That did not stop the left and the media from making it into a black and white, literally like race issue, even though all the people he shot were white, and the business he was trying to protect was owned by people of color. And they made it into a big thing like, hey, this evil kid is a murderer. And so, yeah, that's kind of the basis of the takes that's behind the takes that we're going to get to. So the first take that we've got is a picture of Kyle Rittenhouse, his mugshot. And this person writes, "Maybe the reason you support this kid so much is because you align more morally with murderers and white supremacists. Food for thought."
I mean, food for thought, maybe in the Donald Kimball's 2009 thinking post kinds of thought. It is something to think about. It's something to think about and then dismiss because it's a stupid thought. I don't know about you, but I feel like of all of the I don't know, people to vilify for your cause or whatever, it's probably a bad idea to vilify the person who's on video as not shooting people until he has a gun pointed at him and is physically hit with a skateboard, Like, to me, I don't even think there had to have been another gun in play. There was a gun pointed at him when he, shot the other people. There didn't have to be that gun for him to be assaulted with a skateboard, in my mind, and for that to be valid self-defense. When there are 3 people on one, there doesn't even have to be a skateboard if they're rushing you and physically, aggressing on you, in my opinion, for that to be you to be able to act in self-defense. So the idea that the reason you're aligning with him morally is because you prefer to align with murderers and white supremacists. I mean, you can make that claim, but you sound really desperate because, I mean, there's the obvious facts of the, obviously the white supremacist part is a complete fabrication. I mean, there's nothing about this other than the fact that the protests were in the name of Black Lives Matter. Nothing else about this has anything to do with race. And so, like you pointed out, that it was a black-owned business. All of the victims and himself were white. And so you just have to wonder why they use this line. And it's just, again, one of the buzzwords that the media feeds people, and it's the narrative that they repeat.
Yeah, I mean, to flip it around on them, right? If I was going to, kind of play their, intellectual dwarf mindset, I would say, oh, well, sure, maybe I align with murderers and white supremacists, but you align with child rapists and wife beaters because that's who was shot, right, and who was attacking Kyle. I think your point about, like, like the 3-on-1. I mean, it was yeah, sure, 3-on-1, 2 people killed, 1 person injured, but it was even more than that. It was this crazy like. If you haven't watched the video and you can kind of stomach a little bit of that stuff, like it's worth seeing because you literally a big mob chasing after this guy, running towards a police line, and the police line do nothing. Which for conservatives, I hope that's a wake up call to you. You know, like these police are not your friends. First, they don't defend you. They don't defend Kenosha, and then they don't defend Kyle. And then Kyle is doing his job for them, and then they're not even going to support him. And then after he's done all of it, they become big ol' and tough and put him in jail and lock him up for a little bit, and then they try and prosecute him and put him away for life. So it's like, yeah, it's like no one is really the good guy in this situation. And like you were saying, the white supremacist thing is not part of it. Like it's just self-defense. I think even Joseph Rosenbaum, the first guy that attacked him, was saying the N-word like all night. There's multiple. I don't know if there's video of it, but there's multiple witnesses that were saying he was going around like shoot me, and he was saying the N-word.
What's insane to me is it's like, look, I mean, I don't really buy the line of argument that the Black Lives Matter protests were nonviolent and it was like looters and protesters who were looters and rioters who were taking advantage of the commotion to destroy things, and they weren't doing it. Like, I don't really buy that line when you have these mass protests everywhere, and that's the hallmark signature of so many different ones. Yes, There were peaceful Black Lives Matter protests, but there were also many, many violent protests everywhere, right? Like the whole meme of mostly peaceful protests, you know, talking about like, well, 94%. It's like, okay, but if you have like 6 major cities on fire in the U.S. from these protests, that's a big deal, right? But that aside, like let's give them benefit of the doubt that these are just people here to take advantage of the Black Lives Matter protest, and they turn it into chaos. Well, then why would you want to defend them? Why would you want that to be part of your why would you again, maybe you could argue that he wasn't acting in self-defense. Why would you want to, in the name of, white supremacy, why would you want to make it a moral question of character of these people? Like you pointed out, these are not good people who he shot. Not to say that justifies them being killed, but to make it a moral equivalency of, no, the people out here who were burning and destroying things and trashing a city, no, we're going to say that they were moral because they were speaking out against white supremacy. Again, no indication of that, because all they were doing was destroying things. And if you want to go tit for tat on moral ladders, I think sexually assaulting 5 boys, as one of them did. One of them did 5 young boys. Like that, I think that disqualifies you from holding any moral high ground whatsoever. And the fact that we're in a scenario where people are, they're not. I don't know what the word here is. They're softening the image of these people. It's like you can make the argument that it wasn't self-defense or whatever, and that's fine. But there are posts that are literally softening their characters, and I don't know. It's all you have to do so much imbalance of moral character to say that Kyle Rittenhouse is a murderer and a white supremacist versus these babies, these poor baby, like they were calling him JoJo, and stuff like that, like in the media. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was Mark Ruffalo, right? Ugh.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, moving on to our next one. It's kind of similar vein, obviously.
To be honest, Mark Ruffalo's takes are about as smart as the Hulk anyway. So, and I'm not talking about Smart Hulk.
Not Smart Hulk. Hulk smash Hulk.
Yeah. Hey, just like the protesters at BLM rallies. What do you know?
There you go. So this is a comment or tweeting at Tim Pool, and Tim Pool was talking about someone was saying, hey, we should consider doing Kyle's Law to stop politically motivated prosecution of self-defense. Tim Pool tweeted, I love this idea. And then this Twitter user commented beneath and said, so self-defense is murdering someone with an AR because they ran up on you with a skateboard. Cool. Murder is legal now. Man, I want to hit the guy in the head with a skateboard and be like, all right, if I hit you again and I do it full, as hard as I can, do you think you'll survive? Because that's what happened, man. It's crazy how squishy human beings are, right? I remember, I would chop wood all the time, and we had this big wood splitter for the bigger rounds, and we would chop this wood and cut it, And one time, this little, it was about as big as my hand, just jaded piece of wood fell onto my leg, just supported by the weight of the round, and it cut me really, really bad. And it's just this little thing. It doesn't look menacing or anything, but I just realized at that moment I'm like squishy, right? Like any hard object that has a certain amount of pressure applied to it, a hit against me, whether it's in my leg or my head or anything, can like destroy me. And it's like, man, has anyone like picked up a skateboard? Like, that would hurt really bad, to get hit with that. Potentially like life-altering injuries, well, if not death.
How many hits with a skateboard do you think before this guy believes it's justified? 1 hit? 2 hits? 3 hits? 4? Like, it's a legitimate question. Now, obviously, when there's, an intent, like if I picked up a skateboard and just kind of was like derping around and like sort of went bonk on you with the head, there is obvious, reasonable, like you could not retaliate with force in that scenario. When you're being rushed by a group of people and someone has, a skateboard and is running at you with that skateboard, a stranger, you do not have a reasonable assumption that they're just going to come up and bonk you on the head as a joke. I think at the point where Kyle's, he at the time he was 17 years old, but I mean, he's outsized by these people too. I mean, when someone larger than you is rushing at you, even if they're unarmed, like in a high pressure, tense situation, there's a pretty reasonable claim to self-defense in that moment. If you're being rushed by someone who's unarmed, let alone with an actual, object of force. I mean, like the funny thing is people like this guy in this post is downplaying it like it's like, oh, just like with a skateboard. And it's like, you can use anything really as a tool of offense if you want, like a vase. It's like, oh, anytime someone with a pot of flowers comes up to you, I guess you can murder them now. And it's like, yeah, if someone took like a pot of flowers and smashed you over the head with it, you would have a right to self-defense in that case
almost
too.
Dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This just screams privilege, like to use their term. Like, it's like, have you ever been punched? Like, I have. Like, it's like once you get hit once, it's like, ooh, like I have a lot more respect for what this all means, because they show in the movies, like, oh, you get in a 30-minute fist fight, and everyone walks away with just a broken nose or something. But it's like, dude, if you got you just get punched like 5 times in the head really well, like you fall down, hit your head on the concrete, and you're dead. Like, that's how that happens. That happens all the time. Like, poor people get just in a little bit of a scuffle, and one of them gets hit in the face, and they hit their head just right on the angle of the concrete, and they're done for, right? And it kind of reminds me also of those, like, those folks when those different like cop scenarios show up, and they're like, well, why couldn't they just shoot the gun out of their hand? It's like, have you ever shot a gun? Like,
yeah,
it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
Your illustration makes me think of a time in college when 2 friends of mine who are on my floor, and they were both like, like not overweight, but like heavier set, built kind of guys. They kind of got into like a, oh, I could take, I could beat you in a fight. And it was like, no way, you're a joke. And so they're like, all right, we're going to kind of do this like fight. And it was a play fight. It wasn't like an actual fist fight by any means, but we went back to the dorm building, and they're, they kind of, and my brother took a video of it, and we have it, and it's hilarious, but they're like circling around each other, and one's like kind of, like going into the other. And then, one rushes the other lower, the other who's getting sort of attacked stands his ground and actually flips him on his back, right? And kind of flips him, wham, one bam on his back, and he's done, like out. Like, we were kind of worried he was like seriously hurt. He was fine, but he needed to recover. There was no more after that, right? And that was one friendly bout and one flip. That's what, and that like took him out like for serious harm. So again, and think about, in the Rittenhouse situation, like, let alone the hostile intent, adrenaline is pumping. Like, even if someone was just trying to subdue someone, the amount of adrenaline in your body, you probably can't even control. You wouldn't have that much restraint to be able to hit someone just enough without, intent to kill.
And that's what's so crazy about Rittenhouse specifically, is that the only people he shot and all the bullets that left his gun were directed at people meaning to do him harm. Like, at 17, like, that amount of discipline or luck. I'm not really sure which, because that just is crazy to me. You know, he's on the ground after someone hit him in the head with something. He's trying to clear a malfunction in his rifle, and he has the ability to only shoot the people that are directly a threat to him. Like, to be able to assess that within seconds or milliseconds and do that is just crazy. And so, like, if anything, it's like, man, what a testament to that guy's ability. And just thankfully, people that weren't trying to attack him didn't get shot. Because there's a chance of that, right? Like when it's just like I'm saying, like if you've ever been in a fight, or if anyone's ever attacked you, or if you've ever been in a more hostile situation, like all of your faculties are looking and scanning for threats, right? And you're kind of amped up, and so it was crazy to me that he didn't hit anyone else other than the people that were trying to attack him, because that's usually what happens in those scenarios.
It like similar to a point you were making earlier. It also illustrates the ignorance of these people when it comes to just general gun laws and guns. It's like, of course, the person who actually owns the weapon has done sort of the safety training, has done all that disciplined, protocol to know in those situations, like how to respond, how to think critically. And all the doofuses who haven't done that, they're the ones who are like, we can't let people have guns, and we anyone who can just shoot someone who runs up to them on the street. Like, you're saying that because you're inept. The people who actually like have the weapons and have the respect and the the gumption to want to have self-defense, they're the ones who are actually disciplined and training themselves. Yep.
You got any more in this one?
Nah, we're good.
Cool. All right, moving on to my next favorite. This is my favorite argument for why Kyle Rittenhouse should be in jail. This person writes, "Let's be clear. If a black 17-year-old had crossed state lines to arm himself with an illegally acquired assault rifle, attended a MAGA rally, picked a fight, and shot 3 people, killing 2 of them, the trial would simply be a formality. He'd be in prison for life." So the reason this is my favorite argument that they do is because, well, one, there's a bunch of stuff wrong with this, right? The illegally acquired assault rifle, crossing state lines, all that stuff. He didn't pick a fight. But these folks are saying, well, if he was black, he'd be in jail. And it's like, yeah, and under the same exact circumstances, we would be up in arms about that as well, right? Like, it's wrong. Like, so what? You want, and this was kind of the kid I was telling you about earlier on social media that we chose to spare today, or I chose to spare. I said something about like, hey, like, hopefully this wakes people up to the awful prosecution in the United States, how they're just there to get wins, not actually find the truth. And he's like, well, the riot at this thing was about Black Lives Matter, so maybe someone should like start a thing about that. And it's like, dude, so you should be happy then that Rittenhouse got off, right? Because according to your standards, like, if you're going to apply it evenly, then yeah, I want the black kid that defends himself to get off. I want the white kid that defends himself to get off. Like, stop being a racist,
Right. Yeah, so there's the obvious, just false facts of this, like illegally acquired assault rifle. Nope, not illegally acquired. Just in case anyone hears that argument, just to clear it up. He was 17 at the time, but in the law there locally is you cannot purchase a gun, but you can own. As long as you are in legal possession, you can legally possess a gun at 17. And so his friend had the gun for him when he crossed the state lines, and so he was in legal possession of it. It was not illegally acquired, and that was one charge that was actually thrown out of the court before the jurors couldn't even acquit him on that. They acquitted him on all charges. They couldn't even acquit him on that because the judge dismissed it because it was such a clear standard within state law. So just in case anyone tells you it was illegally, because you can't buy them under 18. That's correct. You can if it's the possession is legal, you can legally possess and use them at his age. So that's obviously untrue. The state lines thing, I think we'll talk about that in the next one, because I think a high profile person brings that up, and so we can talk about that because there's a lot to talk about in this one. But then attended a MAGA rally. Like what? Like, wait, why would you include that? Like, do you think that I don't know, like, are you indicting your own sort of political prisoners, like as though attending a MAGA rally makes you more likely to go to prison or something like that? Like, I guess maybe because of the January 6th show trials going on, maybe you're right. Like, if he'd attended a MAGA rally like that and was black, maybe he would be more likely because your people are so vindictive in the government, right? But yeah, like the main thing here is it's the great meme that comes to mind that addresses this is the first is sort of this lefty meme that shows equality, and it shows the three people standing behind a fence, right? And or I think it just says it starts off by saying like like just life or something like that. It shows a fence and people watching a game, and there's someone who's tall who can see over it. There's someone who's barely tall and can kind of see over it, and then there's someone who's short and they can't. And it shows equality, and it shows everyone having the same level of a footstool. So the tall person's even taller, the middle person can see clearly, but the short person is still blocked because it's not tall enough. And then it shows equity, and it shows the shortest person having the tallest one so he can see and he's at the same height, the middle person having the second the stool so that he can see clearly, and then the tall person getting nothing, and they're all at that same even level so they can all see. So that's the original meme. And what I liked was it shows it showed equity in theory, and it shows that, and then equity in reality, and all three of them have their legs chopped off with a chainsaw and they all can't see. That's equity, and that is what this is. That's every time anyone says a black person in Kyle Rittenhouse's situation would have gone to prison, it's like, okay, and like, what's your point here? Are you saying that Kyle should have gone to prison in the name of equity? Or are you saying that we should reform the justice system to help black people? Because we're with you there. We've always been with you there. That's why, libertarians I've spoken out, and I've seen tons of people speaking out against, in support of the also recently acquitted Andrew Coffey the Fourth, who in 2017, I think it was the FBI raided his house in the middle of the night. He shot back. There were bullets. The FBI, the cops in the FBI killed his girlfriend at the time. All of them were exonerated, and they tried to try him, on assault. He just got acquitted on that, and we're celebrating that too. And then we're also mourning because he got charged with illegal possession of a firearm because he was a drug felon, which we think should not exist. But that should not be a law. So it's like, yeah, maybe there is a problem with the justice system, but maybe it's a problem with the laws themselves in the government, not with the system letting someone off. Like, if this was a case of someone going to prison who shouldn't have, like if it was a black person going to prison and they're saying if he was white, he would have been let off, then you might have more of a case to be like, yeah, we should have a justice system that lets more people off rather than, locking people away for stupid things and crimes like owning a gun and having a drug felony or whatever. So it's this horrible system where they point this out. They're like, oh, if he was black, he would be in prison for life. Like, okay, and so
that's
what
wrong.
Does this have to? That's bad. Do you want Kyle to be in prison as sort of a apology? Like, oh, you know what? You're right. We've been racist in the past. Let's let this guy go to jail for no reason. What kind of a stupid argument is that?
I agree, man. I couldn't have said it better myself on that one. Do you want? We kind of have a lot of the same, so I don't want to. Are you cool moving on to the next one?
Yeah, for sure. Let's
Perfect.
talk about this next one.
This is good segue. So our good friend Mayor Bill de Blasio from New York writes, Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum are victims. They should be alive today. The only reason they're not is because a violent, dangerous man chose to take a gun across state lines and start shooting people. To call this a miscarriage of justice is an understatement. I cannot understand how this guy got elected, dude. Like, he's so dislikable and he's so stupid, and vindictive and just awful. I don't get it, but maybe you have some insight.
Well, I mean, I've been talking a while, but I don't know, man. He crossed state lines. Checkmate, dude.
So did Gage Grosskreutz, right?
Yeah,
he crossed from way further away too, because Kyle had a reason to be there, right? His dad lives in Kenosha, his mom lives outside of Kenosha, so he kind of spends. That's his community, That's the whole thing about it. It's even if it was a crime to cross state lines, it's he probably committed less of a crime than other people, because these folks are trying to say out of state actors that don't live there were going there to protect the place. It's okay, sure, let's say they're even flying from Washington State all the way over there to do it. At least they're there to protect it, right? You had people from out of state, from frickin' Portland, going to Kenosha to burn things, set dumpsters on fire. Hey, I don't know if you saw this moment in the trial, but when the prosecutor was trying to basically like paint Rosenbaum, because everyone's like, oh yeah, dude, like Rosenbaum's kind of an awful dude. Like he raped children, raped children. He would do crazy stuff like date children's moms so that he could integrate into the family, and then he'd rape them. And like the prosecutor's like, oh crap, like I gotta like deal with this perception. And so he's like, oh, Joseph Rosenbaum, what a bad guy. Like all he did on that fateful night in Kenosha was he set a dumpster on fire, and he said some bad words, and he tried to burn a place down, and he swung a chain. Like, man, if he deserved, it's like, dude, like I don't get how that guy's practicing law, but I guess it's the case that he has to make, right, to try and win. And I think Anthony Huber, right, like he had some issues where he was like he was a wife beater basically, you know. So these are not good folks, right? And that's, you were talking about it earlier, like they put all these posters up, kind of in like the art drawn style of like, ooh, like remember Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Hoover. It's like, these are not the folks that you want to be remembering. Joseph Rosenbaum was literally saying the N-word the night that this all was going down, right? Like he just gotten out of jail from 15 years of being in prison for raping children, and I'm pretty sure by all accounts, it seems like he had a death wish, right? Like he was trying to tell people to shoot him. He was, classified psychotic, and it's just this De Blasio guy, like he just has the worst. It's like all of this stuff is a lie, and all you have to do is Google it. So it's like, where did you get your source from? Like CNN, and it's like, yeah, that's where this guy gets his talking points from. Is from whatever news outlet and whoever's feeding that news outlet their talking points.
Just remember that anytime the government is trying to make a stakeholder feel comfortable, they are using you. Do not forget that, okay? When they're saying education dollars, it's for the children. They don't care about the children. They're promoting a child predator. We just want to empower women and women's rights and the women's right to choose and these awful misogynists. They're promoting a woman beater, okay? Oh, we just care about families or whatever, but you're a racist white supremacist for supporting for the families that came out to support McAuliffe in the Virginia election. It does not matter what the stakeholder is; they will always use you. And you know what? Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum are white men who were their victims not that long ago. So it's like, shut up. Stop pretending that any victim that fits your narrative is a protected whatever. Like I hope that people realize this more and more, how just transparent these creeps in government are, that all they're doing is just changing whoever fits their agenda in the moment, that we care. Look, we're trying to protect they're victims. They're getting taken advantage of. No. The state is taking advantage of you. The state is always taking advantage of people. It's gross and disgusting. And a great example of this is the whole like state line thing. Like, what an absurd, on a just like a not philosophical, even just sort of like a thinking level, like my first one to think is to plan ahead or whatever. Like, if I live next door, like my home growing up was kind of right on the border of my city. So I was like a 1 minute drive from being in a different city. I was just on the end. And so it's like, if I drove down to my dad's office, which was technically in the next city over, I was very familiar with that area because it's like, that's where my dad's office is. It's like a 5-minute drive from my house. It's right down there. And there are parts of that city that are like a 25-minute drive away from that, right? Who do you think has more of a connection? Someone with this arbitrary magical line drawn, or someone who actually has a connection there, who's much closer? All of the other people, as far as I'm aware, not even just the one who crossed other state lines. The other ones like had double the distance. Even if they were in state, they had like an hour drive to get down to Kenosha, even if they were still in Wisconsin, as far from what I'm aware. So again, the people who are telling you that borders and immigration and those kinds of things are arbitrary because humans are humans, they're the ones also telling you that no, this arbitrary line means that Kyle's a bad person because he traveled a shorter amount of different distance, but it was over this state-sanctioned, religious line. And that's what matters here. Nothing else matters. He walked over this magical state idea, and that's the problem here. What a stupid. Like, this is one of those things that just gets repeated by people. And like, I don't, I don't condone people mindlessly repeating things. I don't blame the drones as much as I do blame the crafters of these things. But it really frustrates me when I hear, my friend or my Facebook acquaintance repeat the state lines thing. Like, what does that mean? I saw someone, what did they say? They were like, oh, and the state lines shows that it was disconnected, a disconnected reality. So don't give me that whole like he had family there nonsense. I'm like, what does that mean? You just took a valid point and you said, don't give me the answer to this made up problem I gave you. Like it was like he thought he was addressing that connection by saying, and don't give me that. That you can't just say, oh, and it's, I think 2 + 2 = 5, and don't give me any of that 4 nonsense. Like, how?
Yeah. Yeah. That's good, man. You okay doing our next one?
Yeah. If I don't
Cool.
get an aneurysm first.
Yes. This will be a short pit stop because it's pretty low hanging fruit. But this gal, she posted a story of a picture of Biden reacting to the Rittenhouse verdict, and he said, "Hey, the jury system works, and we have to abide by it." A very Joe Biden answer. And she wrote on her story, "The jury system works. Another older white male who happens to be our president." So infuriating. What's funny is this gal was posting about why we needed to vote for Joe Biden back in November. I think it's what a hell of a thing to say. I don't like Joe Biden. Sure, like her and I have that in common, I guess, but. Like, for her to not like him because he's an older white dude and all that is just like, it's just, I don't know what you say to that. Like, and she's white, that's what's nuts about it. Yeah, she's white. And I don't necessarily, the jury system and our whole system of justice, like, yeah, I don't really necessarily agree that it works, right? Because there's plenty of innocent people that are behind bars and all that. But it reminds me of when Jordan Peterson was debating Eric Dyson on identity politics and cultural Marxism, and Eric Dyson getting cornered and getting destroyed by Jordan Peterson said, "I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by an angry white man." And it's just like, whoa, dude, like that's such a thing to say, like. Like that's like blatantly like what Eric Dyson was doing in that moment was dismissing valid arguments that he couldn't answer and using a personal attack of the person's race to basically discard it. And that's what this person is doing here. And what's more so is she's white, so it's embarrassing, man. It's embarrassing.
I have so many thoughts on this because this really does play into that identity politics line, right? Where for one thing, I don't know. It sounds this post sounds a little dangerously close to ageism to me. Another older white man. Like, ooh, I don't know, man. Be careful if this was in the workplace, you could get in big trouble. But second of all, the funny thing is like in that Jordan Peterson Dyson example you gave, and in this one where they're specifying white, it's done so as a pejorative in a way, and you can argue that it's contextual. I don't really, maybe in the Peterson one it does as well. And this one you could argue that it contextually makes sense because it was the justice system is unfair to black people specifically, even though the Rittenhouse case didn't have anything to do with race. Okay, but like benefit of the doubt there. But regardless, you're using white as a pejorative in that way. And these are also the people who are very offended by the use of the word like gay or retarded as slurs rather than just as descriptors. Because even they're saying like, well, even if you're joking around, like even if you're, like saying that to your gay friend, and they think it's funny, it's still demeaning. It's still using it as a pejorative. You're still culturally using it. But that standard doesn't apply to something like this where you're just saying, oh, I can dismiss you because you're a white male. Where it's, again, you might, I might be white, but you're still using it in a pejorative way, right? So how come that same standard doesn't apply? I don't really care personally. You can insult me for being white all you want. Nothing I can do about my pigmentation. I don't really care. But like these people, they really fail to see how their own logic, they they break their own logic in these ways. The other funny thing about this post is Biden really wanted to try to have his cake and eat it too. He's like, I'm frustrated and disappointed, but our jury system works. And so you're like, oh yeah, I'm sure everyone's gonna remember that first part, Joe. real winner there. You damage saved.
All right.
Well,
moving on.
Of course, one last thing is, of course, Kamala Harris came out in complete opposite, saying that there was a lot of work to be done, which was really rich coming from someone who spent her whole life putting people behind bars for much less. So it's like, yeah, you would want to put someone in prison because you like to put a lot of people in prison for things that they didn't deserve to go to prison for.
Mother, father, have kids. She loved all of it. She wanted to put them all away.
Yep.
All right, moving on to our very last one. This person tweeted this out in response to the not guilty verdict being read. And she wrote, "When will we stop acting surprised when the fascist state functions as a fascist state and start arming ourselves and defending our communities from right-wing violence?" Donnie, I think you could probably file this in the accidentally almost based category.
Hey, accidentally based for me, because if white or right-wing communities are coming in and enacting violence, not in self-defense, then yeah, left-wing communities should arm themselves and defend themselves. Absolutely.
Yeah, I see
if
it gets turned on its head, let's do it. What's just hilarious is, like, I found this just so funny that, like, it's like, so you don't like what happened, and you don't like that the person that defended their community from left-wing radicals coming in and destroying it, like, your response to that is, we need to arm ourselves and defend our communities from right-wing violence. It's like, we must live in two different realities. Like, it's like, it's just crazy to me. I agree. Like, hey, don't be surprised when the fascist, government, because all governments are fascist to some degree or other, like, acts in a fascist authoritarian way. Like, yes, based. Yes, you should arm yourself because that fascist government is going to use their authority to, like, cram down things that aren't good. And then we need to defend our communities from right-wing violence. Like, okay, if there was right-wing violence, like, defend yourselves. Do you also agree, like, if a community is facing left-wing violence that cause billions upon billions and billions and billions and billions, as that Trump meme, goes, dollars of damage, it's like, yeah, you should agree with that, right? Like, but they don't. And it's just so weird to me. It's like, maybe I'm the stupid one, right? Maybe I'm not seeing something, because this sort of take, it's like the whole thing that Hitler had. It's like, make a lie big enough and people will believe it because it has to be true. It's like, okay, am I being deceived? Like, no, because I've seen it with my own eyes. Literally a mile down the road, during the BLM riots of 2020, people were overturning cop cars and breaking into stores and stuff. So it's like, well, I've seen it, right? I don't really see that on the other side very often. That's not to say that it doesn't, but yeah, it's just crazy, man. I don't really get how, kind of to some of our peers, not peers, but fellow libertarians' points. It's like, maybe we do need to secede, right? Maybe that's the most peaceful thing, because how can I share a country with someone that thinks that I can't defend myself, right? Or thinks that I'm an evil person for defending myself, or someone that defends their community is evil? I don't know.
Yeah, I can't imagine that, the state is being fascist in this particular instance. It's very odd. You'd think that, like, it might be fascist if the system exonerated cops, if that's what you're criticizing it for, if they, like, cops wrongfully doing something. Which is most things, actually, or if they were to indict someone wrongfully. There's plenty of examples of that. This is just the worst example to pick, right? Yeah, and it's funny because this is the person who is, based on their Twitter profile, the kind of person who's critical of Democrats and Republicans, but in the wrong way, like on the very, very far left, like Noam Chomsky wannabe kind of way. And it's disappointing because it feels like you're so close, and that you recognize that the state is you recognize that our current state is the problem. Unfortunately, you don't realize that the state is the problem. You think that somehow we can fix it, and it's like, yeah, so you and unfortunately, if we highlight this tweet too much, I'm afraid the National Libertarian Party is going to try to recruit her to be a libertarian. Really the problem is that this is the kind of person who thinks that there can be a state who should have a monopoly on violence, It's just that it needs to be a lefty state that's a benevolent state to all, that isn't enforcing democracy overseas and therefore will be perfectly fine at home. It's like, look, we can end all of our terrible, awful foreign interventions abroad, and we absolutely should. We're in agreement there. That's not going to make the state at home any better. That the state at home is still going to oppress. It's still going to be bad. And so, I don't want to have that state being the only ones in charge of defense. And so, let your communities defend yourself from right-wing violence. Let everyone defend themselves from violence. And let's start with not encroaching a terrible state on everyone. And I mean, like, goodness, especially considering like the communities often are supposed to be defended by police, and they were just standing down the whole time. So
yep.
There's just never been a good impetus for the state to ever have a meaningful grasp on defense. Like, there are times when police go and do their job, but if we had a society where people realized it was incumbent upon themselves, there would be much better mechanisms for defense rather than relying on a state that ultimately is not really accountable to you as a taxpayer, either in any sort of reputation, in any sort of financial, or any sort of legal sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about, because that's one of the things people come back, when we talk about our anarcho-capitalist, society we desire. And they're like, well, won't there just be warlords, and won't there be people, what do we do about cops? It's like, I think about like there's, I can't remember the guy's name specifically right now, but he started, because families were being kidnapped in the suburbs by gangs in Detroit, and he started his own like private security, system. And it kind of grew into him also being able to, do corporate jobs, right? Guarding their cash trucks and all that stuff. And I think he's been around for about 18 years or something like that. And in the 18 years of being in existence, never had prevented hundreds of kidnappings, hundreds of robberies, attempted robberies on cash trucks, and not had a single fatality, right? In terms of on his team or a team that was trying to, he was trying to prevent them from doing what they were going to do. And it's like, oh, like the reason why is the incentives are all there, right? Like, he doesn't want to kill anyone, because if he kills someone, like, then it's going to be a whole big mess for the corporation that he works for, right? And so, like, the thing that's cool about anarchism is that if people just kind of think through, like, the world in light of, like, incentives and disincentives and, who stands to gain or lose by a certain action being done, it's like, oh, it makes sense, right? Like, you don't really even have to ask the question, who will build the roads? It's like, it's obvious. The businesses that want people to come do business at their shop are going to build the roads. And so, yeah, I hope this person, like, I have hope for them, right? Because it's like they are awake enough to like know that there's something wrong, and that's kind of like the start to it. And now let's hopefully kind of get them to where they need to be, and where you can actually have a society that doesn't use aggression to enforce things that don't need to be enforced. You got any more on this one?
Nope, I'm good.
Awesome. Well, folks, thanks for hanging out with us for our Rittenhouse Marathon. If we said anything that made you cringe, or if you have any input on the takes that we had or strengthening them, please let us know. You can catch us at Cringe Post Pod on all of our social media, or at cringepost.com. And yeah, be sure, please, like I said at the beginning of the show, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. We'll catch you later.